All right, folks, today we are going to be discussing the pre-fight press conference for UFC 257. On that press conference, we had Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirier, and we're also going to have Michael Chandler versus Dan Hooker. And so what we're going to do is we're going to be reviewing their body language in order to get an insight into the sort of state of mind that they're in. And I do want to mention that there's no way to catch every little subtle detail of their body language. It just wouldn't make sense. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a general overview of the press conference and of the body language that we see. And I really want you to keep in mind, and I've mentioned this in previous videos, is that body language must be read in clusters. You can't just look at one specific little signal and assume that this is how this person feels or this is what they're thinking. You have to read it in clusters. And now that I got that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into it.
Ready to make a statement in his UFC.
And now here we see Michael Chandler walking in to the press conference. He seems to be a little stiff. You can tell he's very serious by looking at his face, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. He does look confident, and honestly, he looks like he's ready for war.
And his opponent, New Zealand's finest, coming off a 2020 in which he put on two of the best fights of the year.
And so here we see Dan Hooker walk into the press conference. He's doing the opposite. He's smiling. He seems to be feeling pretty good. He looks confident. He walks in, gives Dana that big smile, and then goes to sit down. So it's an interesting juxtaposition between Michael and Dan. They both look confident, but in two different ways.
Here is the Irish megastar, the notorious Conor McGregor.
And now we see Conor McGregor walking in, and he's giving a smile. He's waving to the crowd. He looks like he's having a good time and feeling pretty good. Gives a little fist bump and then daps up Dana. He looks comfortable, looks confident.
And he faces one of the best fighters in the world today. The pride of Lafayette, Louisiana, winner of 4 of his last 5 fights.
And finally, we see Dustin Poirier walking in. He gives that little showing off his bicep, walking in relatively confident. Also daps up Dana and shakes Conor's hand. But I do want to mention here that we do have some tightened and or inward rolled lips here. And this is really important to keep in mind. When we tighten our lips, it can mean a few things. So if someone else is speaking and we do it, it can show that we don't really agree with what that person may be saying. On the other hand, if there isn't another person talking and you see this from someone, it can show that there's a little bit of tension and a little bit of stress that they're feeling. Now in this case, it's a big event, UFC 257. These are always big events. There's lots of reporters in this place. There's people all over the world watching. Obviously, a little bit of nervousness and a little bit of stress is normal.
Now that you're kind of in the building, you're getting a sense for what the atmosphere is like. And we think about you, the bright lights are on, the big crowds, that's when you perform. How does that affect your energy, your focus on fight night?
I tell you what, it feels pretty good right now, you know, the crowd here. I know it's a small crowd, but it feels good, so I'm very happy to be here.
So here you can really notice how happy Conor is to be back. He clearly loves this sport. He loves to fight. He loves the UFC, and he's really, really excited to be back. This is really a genuine smile. I've talked about it in the past. If you see creases by the corners of the eyes, this is a sign of a genuine smile. Obviously, it's a little bit difficult to see here since Conor is wearing glasses and there's some shade on his face, but this is a genuine smile. You can see that he is truly happy and excited to be back.
Yes, I did get the win over him the first time, but you know, he's rose right up and he's back up there at the top of the division, so I'm excited to go and compete with him again.
Fair enough. And you went out there and kind of made a pretty...
Now, one thing I want to point out here, and you see it a lot throughout this press conference from Conor McGregor, he tends to sit up straight after he's done talking and even, fix his jacket, fix his clothes. I've covered this in another video, but what you'll see a lot of times is that men will straighten their clothes. Now, you might see it from women too, but in most cases you see it from men. They'll fix their clothes, their jacket, their shirt, whatever it might be. in a certain situation. Now, it's a subconscious way to make ourselves feel confident. We're straightening our clothes, making sure that they look nice so that we look presentable to the rest of the world.
I wanted to ask you, I mean, you fought this year in the Apex, put on a Fight of the Year type candidate, right? Does that provide any benefit? I mean, this atmosphere is unique. It's different, right? I mean, does that give you any kind of an edge once you go in there, or is an octagon an octagon?
An octagon's an octagon. It's actually good to see us moving in this direction and fans coming back. That's the direction we need to be, opening things up as safe as we can. And the UFC and Abu Dhabi here are doing that. So I'm excited to put on a show for these guys.
Yeah.
So this is really interesting here. Dustin seems a little nervous. He seemed like he stuttered a little bit there when he was speaking just a second ago. And we also notice his lips are a little tight there at the end, and it almost looked like he gulped for a second there. These are both signs of a little bit of nervousness, a little bit of stress. Again, it's a big event. There's lots of people. You know, maybe Dustin is more introverted. We'll just have to see as this video continues.
You walk in there with a little chip on your shoulder?
Every fight is a chip on my shoulder. I'm trying to prove something. I'm trying to the work that I put in, I'm trying to make it pay off.
This is important to note here. When Dustin is speaking, Conor is looking directly at him. If you watch the press conference, you'll notice that Dustin doesn't directly turn around and look at Conor when he's speaking. So this is generally a sign of confidence. He's looking directly at the person that's talking.
Just one last one for Dana, please. Dana, obviously this is a massive pay-per-view.
Sir, you've got the hot sauce, Dustin. I'm actually I'd love to taste the hot sauce.
I got a bottle for you.
I appreciate that. I've got a bottle of proper for you. I'd love to share that.
So another interesting thing to look at here is Conor cuts off the reporter. So the reporter was about to ask a question and Conor cut him off. Now, in most cases, this may be a bit rude, but obviously he wanted to ask Dustin about his new hot sauce, and it sounds like he's interested in trying some of that hot sauce eventually. Now, cutting someone off when they're speaking is a sign of confidence. Again, in this case, it doesn't look like, you know, Conor obviously isn't in a bad mood. He's in a good mood, but it is a general sign of confidence. And another thing I really want to notice here is Conor just seems like he's smiling more. Dustin seems like he's smiling less. As most of us probably understand, smiling is a sign of confidence, of feeling good, of feeling relaxed. So again, from Dustin, it could just be nervousness about the big fight. It may not necessarily mean that it's lack of confidence for the fight itself, but only time will tell. Let's move on and see what else we can find.
Everything has been wonderful thus far, and I'm excited to go out there, start this new chapter. Got a blank page on Saturday night to start this new chapter of my career. I'm excited to get out there and compete.
So Michael Chandler answering some questions here. He looks calm and generally serious, as I had mentioned before. We do notice some pursed lips here right at the end. So again, maybe just a little bit of tension, internal stress. And I keep mentioning it. It's a big event, big fight, lots of people watching, lots of reporters, so on and so forth. It's normal. His speech seems relatively clear and normal. So overall, he seems relatively confident.
So what do you make of Michael Chandler's striking inside the octagon?
He's aggressive. The guy comes out, he's a fast starter. So I'm expecting by the end of that first 5 minutes, we're going to know how this thing's going to play out. I'm expecting him to come at me. I'm expecting a fast start, but I'm not one to back down to a challenge.
And now we have Dan Hooker answering some questions, and he also seems relatively calm and confident, but he's hunched over while he's speaking. Now, it could just be that he's tall. I know that he is taller than Michael Chandler, and I think he's taller than Dustin and Conor also. So it could just be that he's taller. But a lot of times when we're, hunched over, when you see that from people, that may be a sign of trying to make ourselves small and hide. In this case, I don't believe that to be the case. I think that's just how he's sitting. Again, we have to read body language in clusters. And then at the end, we do see some, tightened lips. And again, maybe some just internal stress. Most people, again, if you're not feeling a little tiny bit of stress here in this sort of situation, you're not human.
As a win over Hooker, who's on stage here, you know, he has a win, he knocked out Justin.
Now, one thing I really want to point out here, and you see it throughout the press conference, is Dustin has both hands under the table at all times. Unless he's speaking and he has the microphone in one hand, he has both hands under the table. Our hands are a very intimate part of our bodies, and so putting them in our pockets or putting them under tables, this can be a sign of nervousness. And I also want to point out here that he's not taking up a lot of space. So his arms are straight down, it looks like, onto his lap. And taking up space is a sign of confidence. When we feel good, we spread out.
I think most media fans, we want to crown a new undisputed lightweight champion by the end of the year, and I just want to get a quick confirmation
Book it,
from each of you that you're
in.
in.
Book it, I mean.
Yes, sir. Michael.
So this is really good here. This is great. A clear sign of confidence. Reporter asks, he was talking to Dana, he was asking him, you know, will we have a new lightweight champion? And Conor, without being spoken to, just jumps in and says, book it. Like, yes, it's going to be me, and go ahead and put me in the fight. Let's book the fight. Let's set it up right now. Again, this is a clear sign of confidence. He feels good. And again, he wasn't being spoken to, but he decided to voice his opinion anyway. And I also do want to point out his right arm is behind the chair. So he's spread out. He has this open body. He's opening up his chest. He's opening up his body to the other people, to the world. Opening up your body is kind of like I was talking about earlier, like taking space. When you open your body, when you stretch your body out, you feel confident. This is a sign of confidence.
I know you said prior to the fight with Dan there that you didn't really like that there was a certain expectation that you would win going in, and you kind of relish being the underdog more. Can you just speak a little bit more to that, and do you feel at your most comfortable going into a fight like this?
I'm not sure if I relish it, but of course I want to be cheered when I walk out, but I'm acquainted with it. I know the feelings, and I've been in this position time and time again. That's just it. I'm just acquainted with it.
All right, I think he let down a lot of people with that answer. So Dustin here is obviously asked if he likes the pressure, and he says that he doesn't necessarily like it, but that he's acquainted with it. It doesn't have the same sort of energy that you would expect from someone who feels confident going into a fight. It doesn't have the same sort of energy that we see currently from Conor. Or even that we see from Dan or from Michael. He looks a little stiff, and you can obviously see because the crowd afterwards doesn't give him much of an applause after that. And it's really interesting too to point out here, he looks down at the table, almost contemplating what he just said. It's almost like he's in his own head. He's thinking too much. He's inside of his head rather than being in the moment and being out there.
Competed there twice. You've been in the UFC for, 7 years? You've only competed at 155 pounds twice. Is that your ideal weight class, do you think? Do you think that's where you operate at the highest level?
I've done pretty good in all the other ones as well. Yeah. You know, I've done good in them all. I've secured belts in multiple divisions, and I've secured knockout victories in multiple divisions.
So this is really good to point out. You see this from a lot of people who are very confident in themselves, who have a lot of self-confidence, they compliment themselves. And Conor is doing this here, and has done this a couple times throughout the press conference, and will continue to do it some more here towards the end. So he's saying how great he is, and this just boosts that internal confidence that he has in himself. Now, I can't stress enough how important your internal self-talk is to your overall confidence and to your overall happiness in life. And I know this is something that Conor has talked about in the past. It's not just about your physical game, it's not just about your physical capability, it's about your mental game as well. What are you telling yourself internally?
I have not had much time at this weight in the UFC, and this is what I wish to do now.
So this is also really good to point out. Conor is human. He is not 100% confidence. It almost looks like he's pushing his tongue towards the front of his mouth and it's touching his lips. And you can see his lips are a little tense there. And we also notice that he adjusts his collar. This is something that can be a sign of stress. When we adjust our collar, it's almost like we're feeling a little hot internally. There's a little bit of tension.
You fought in this country before to unify the lightweight strap against Khabib Nurmagomedov. Is this stage greater for you than UFC 242?
It's obviously a huge fight, but fighting for the world title is the biggest fight you can get to me, because that's the reason I fight. I want to be the undisputed world champion. I'm still chasing that goal, and I know this fight here gets me one step closer to that.
So another thing that we've noticed throughout this press conference is that Dustin doesn't hold the mic very confidently. He doesn't wrap his fingers all the way around the microphone. Now, I'm sensing I might get a little bit of pushback from that, so let me explain. Have you ever noticed somebody put their hand on something, lean up against something when they're talking or when they're standing somewhere? This is a sign of confidence. It may not be conscious, but subconsciously, when we lean up against something, it's like internally we feel like we own this thing. And the same goes even for small objects like a microphone. When we're confident, we can grab that microphone with our entire hand and wrap our fingers all the way around it. When we're not so confident, we could be like Dustin and kind of just hold it in between our fingers.
It's really poignant, and I think it deserves to be read out in full, so just bear with me. I've lost my mind on this game, like Vincent van Gogh, dedicated his life to his art, and he lost his mind in the process. That's happened to me, but fuck it. When that gold belt is around my waist, and my mother has a big mansion, my girlfriend has a car for every day of the week, and my kids' get everything they ever wanted, then it will pay. Then I'll be happy I lost my mind. Can you just reflect and talk to me about how that makes you feel hearing that in 2021?
You know, it's been some ride. I've got it done, and I'm up here, mad as a brush. You know what I mean?
This is a really genuine moment, and it's really good to see from Conor. You see a genuine smile, a really, really big smile that he has on his face while this reporter is reciting something that he had said when he was a young fighter, saying how he wanted to ultimately become successful and improve not only his life, but the lives of his family members. And you also notice here that his voice kind of cracked a little bit there.
You know,
It hit him hard, it hit him deep. He's obviously very proud of what he's accomplished.
What are you doing here? I'm like, I'm not allowed here. I want to be here. I want to perform for the fans. I'm a young man. I've got many highlights.
And again here, something I hadn't pointed out earlier is Conor is throughout this press conference starting to speak louder and continues to speak clearly. He constantly continues to say how great he is and compliments himself.
Dustin, everybody's talking about how much you've changed as a fighter since the last time you fought Conor. What would you say is the main thing that changed in your game and that would make a difference this Saturday, whether mentally or physically?
I think technically as well. Mentally for sure, technically as well. I mean, 6 years since we fought, you have to evolve to stay at the top of the division for this long, to stay in the company for this long. And just maturity. And I don't care what anybody out here thinks anymore. I used to care too much. I don't care. That's a superpower, not giving a fuck. And that's it.
And so finally here we have Dustin again answering another question. And he was asked ultimately what has changed about him since the last time he fought Conor. He gave a few reasons, as we saw, but the energy just wasn't there. It wasn't the same sort of energy that we've seen so far throughout his upcoming opponent, Conor. He spoke somewhat quietly and was relatively short. Ultimately, I think Dustin spent too much time in his head throughout this entire press conference, and it's clear that he feels relatively nervous. Is that nervousness due to just the event itself, and he still feels confident in his ability to beat Conor, or is he just overall nervous about the fight itself and doesn't feel that he can beat Conor. And so now to wrap things up, one thing I want to discuss is what can we learn from this? What can we take from what we just saw in this press conference? So the first thing that we can do is we can start to open up our bodies. This is again a sign of confidence. We can start to put our hands, put our bodies on things when we're speaking, when we're standing there. If you don't feel confident initially doing it, you'll start to feel confident as you're doing it. You'll start to feel better about yourself. Another is to try to speak clearly, try to raise your voice a little bit. Don't be too loud and annoying, but speak clearly so that others can see you, and obviously look at them directly when you're speaking to them. And one of the most important is your internal self-talk. What are you telling yourself each and every day? Every moment, when you mess up on something, are you telling yourself how stupid you are and how you could have done something better? Or are you saying, hey, it's fine, I'm still the man, and I'm gonna move on, and I'm gonna grow, and I'm gonna be better? Are you telling yourself how great you are? Are you telling yourself how amazing you are, how smart you are, how beautiful you are? These are all really, really important things to do that are not only going to impact how confident you feel in yourself, but they're going to impact your overall happiness in life. This is really, really important. And so now for the final part, I'm going to make some predictions here. Obviously, you can't predict who's going to win a fight based on body language, but if body language is going to give us a little bit of insight, here's what I've got. So based on the co-main event versus Dan Hooker and Michael Chandler, I think they were both relatively confident. Michael Chandler seemed a little more stiff. Dan seemed relatively relaxed and was smiling. So I'm going to go ahead and say that Dan wins that fight. And for the main event, we have Dustin Poirier versus Conor McGregor. Dustin seemed very nervous at this press conference. Conor seemed very confident and relaxed. I think Conor is going to win this fight. And that is it. That is the video. Go ahead and comment down below. Let me know what your predictions are on the fight and any questions or comments you had about what we saw here at this press conference. Take care.